A warm welcome. I'm Tom Hassan. I'm School Year Abroad's president, and I, on behalf of my colleagues in the home office in Massachusetts and my colleagues overseas, I are delighted to welcome you to this webinar and delighted to welcome you to the SYA family. Over time, we've been anticipating this moment, and I first want to say congratulations to the students. We've gotten to know you through the application process, and it's clear through your accomplishments and your maturity that what awaits you at SYA is going to be totally exciting. And parents, I want to take a moment to thank you. Thank you for supporting your child in this application process. I can imagine that probably the idea about SYA has come from them versus you. And thank you for opening your minds and your hearts to this possibility. I know that the students will find quite a year or a semester ahead of them. And thank you for supporting, and also thank you for raising such creative and intrepid individuals who really want to kind of look beyond the computer screen and get out there and really understand the world. And boy, what a year it's been for us all. And we just long to have that personal connection and to get to know and feel and understand well beyond ourselves. So welcome and thank you. And also you can imagine that as a person who meets a lot with alumni, I often ask them about their own SYA experiences. And these are alumni who, span the decades, those who started SYA in the 60s and others who were with us through 2020. And I asked them about their SYA experience, and a phrase that pops up all the time, and that's unprompted by me, is a life-changing experience. And that's what we offer you and look forward for you to be part of all of this. I'm also delighted today because we're just excited that we're able and prepared to open up next September. And we have spent many, many hours contemplating that, and we've worked hard. And let me tell you a little bit about the criteria that we've used. One of them is that we really want to make sure that we can follow the mandates of the countries. They're not significantly different than what we find in America, and they're also relaxing as things are opening up in America as well. But there are some individual country differences. We also want to make sure our schools are safe and able to open up, and schools in the area are open, and that's all that we can say yes. And then finally, we want to make sure that overseas travel is possible and visas. And again, all of that points to opening up. And again, we're delighted to be able to say that and welcome you to SYA. Today, I want to introduce people who are going to be joining me in this webinar. I want to welcome our three resident directors, Pat Scanlon, who is from Italy, and you can see he's got a background to prove that. And so Pat has actually, the Italy program is 20 years old. And Pat, in the first years of that, came over from Albuquerque Academy in New Mexico to teach English. And he loved Italy, loved SYA, we loved him, and he's been with us ever since, and he's been resident director for most of that. There are now thousands of SYA Italy alums who remember being with Pat there. And as I go over to visit in Viterbo, it's a medieval walled city, and Pat and I walk around, it's clear to me that he really has another job, and he's the unofficial mayor of that city. So everyone knows him in town. And so Pat, welcome. Thank you for being with us tonight, and thank you for being with SYA. I also want to introduce Mina Kadir. Mina is live from Rennes, France. And Mina has spent time as an educator in America, but most of her life is over in Rennes with her family and her cute little puppy. She posts pictures of them all, but also she posts great pictures of our students when they're over there and out and about. We do a lot of experiential learning with our students, and we get them out in the streets of Rennes and beyond that. And Mina posts those pictures, in fact, of alums who come back and visit her and the teams and their host families. I also want to introduce Megan Roof, who comes from right there from Spain. And she and her husband are wonderful educators and devoted dearly to their students. And Megan actually found out about traveling abroad through her own experience as a college student and has never looked back. She teaches, she's taught for many years in America, and she has led many trips over to Spain, and we're delighted to have her as part of our leadership team in Zaragoza. Now, what's been happening over the last few months is that our faculty are back with us and getting prepared for next fall. And in fact, today we had a Zoom call of faculty and talking about the work that we're doing around justice and equity and diversity. But also they're working on their lessons. I told you a minute ago about our experiential approach to education. And so we're got our sleeves rolled up. And actually a silver lining of all this is that we use Zoom a lot. And so not only are these faculty working in their locations, but they're working across locations and comparing notes. Our teachers who teach about politics are talking about what their lessons are and comparing what they'll do next fall and next spring with our students. So it's great to have all of that together. I also want to introduce Sam Gammons. Sam is a colleague of mine over here in the States, and Sam and I work very closely together. And Sam is our school operations and safety manager. She's also our registrar. And what Sam and I do is we kind of look to see what the best practices are in overseas studies and make sure that we're doing that. And Sam and I, together with the RDs, meet regularly, and we talk about things like what are our policies and practices, what's happening overseas, how can we make sure we align what we can, and also communicate. And this team actually has been put to the test because last year about this time, we moved our students from our overseas programs and pivoted to have them, and almost every single one remained with us as in hybrid learning that was going on. And it was really exciting to see that. And in fact, there was, again, another upshot of what we've been through is that we had students back with their families in America. They were Zooming with their host families and making meals together and having great conversations. And the student was in the middle of that, making sure that translation happened, which is always fun to watch. And the parents are amazed at how quickly students get immersed in not only the culture, but the language. And it's great to see. So without further ado, what I'd love to do is turn this over to Sam. And I've asked her to really talk about the safety procedures that we'll have in place for next year. And that is what's going to be common across the campuses. And I encourage you that we've sent in some questions where we've incorporated the answers into our presentation today. If you do have questions that come up during the presentation, if you can put them in the question and answer box, we'll have some time at the end to do that. But I also want to let you know that we're going to have more times for you to connect with your individual countries, get to know the RDs better, get to know your other fellow students. And those will begin the week of March 22nd. We'll have another one in May, and then throughout orientation as we lead up to the departures, which happen at the end of the summer. So without further ado, Sam, I'm going to turn this over to you, and thank you for all you do for SYA.
Thanks, Tom. And I just want to say a quick welcome. And students, I understand the excitement that you're feeling right now because I'm actually an SYA alum. I am from the China class of 2001. So congratulations, everyone. This is a hugely exciting time. And, you know, I understand that spirit of determination that it takes for you to seek out and commit to an experience like SYA. So I am going to share my screen right now and go into a little presentation for you. So today and after today, you're actually going to be hearing from me a lot since, as Tom said, I am both your registrar and also working in health and safety protocols for each of our campuses. You know, as someone who studied abroad during a time that had a fair amount of geopolitical tension between the US and China, I've really seen firsthand just how devoted our faculty and staff are, both overseas and here in the United States, and just, you know, the care and the attention that gets paid to the safety of our students. I'm very grateful to be part of that process now. One thing that you're going to be hearing a lot today, and you've already heard from Tom a little bit, is about the local laws and regulations and how important those are and how those fit into our campus reopening plans. I want you to keep in mind, please, that we have 3 campuses, and all of those campuses reside in different countries that have different laws. As a result, there are some protocols we put into place that apply generally to all campuses, and there are some protocols that may apply to 1 or 2 campuses. What I'm going to be introducing and talking to you about today are those protocols that apply across all of the campuses. So like Tom said, you are going to have more opportunities to speak to your resident director about specific in-country laws and regulations and what updates have been going on in country. We've worked really hard to try and balance the differences between the local laws and the standards that American families may be accustomed to when working with American boarding and day schools. But, you know, as SYA is a very, very unique school, there are bound to be some differences. These details I'm going to share are true across campuses, as I said, and will be equally enforced. Because of the more general nature, they may not speak directly to every single one of your specific questions, but like Tom said, if you do have burning questions, please use that Q&A function. And if there's a question you have that we don't cover, we'll do our best to answer your questions now or when we have the answers to those. Tom mentioned earlier that, you know, there have been, we have been carefully monitoring the situation with COVID-19. And there have been some criteria that SYA has looked to throughout the pandemic and before it was even called a pandemic, back as far as January of 2020. We constantly monitor sites domestic to the US like the CDC, as well as international sites like our European Center for Disease Prevention and Health Ministries in France, Italy, and Spain. Some of the data that we're currently tracking, as you can see on the screen right now, include the vaccination numbers and the 7-day daily average number of new cases per 100,000 residents in each of the countries where we operate. In addition, we track the 7-day daily averages in the regions in France, Italy, and Spain where our campuses are located, as well as in the United States as a whole and a handful of key states in the US. You'll be able to view this information on our website, and I encourage you to do so via the COVID-19 updates page, which is linked on the banner at the top of SYA.org. So the graph that you're going to find on that COVID updates page is updated weekly, and it includes the 7-day daily average numbers as they are released in Europe. I want to talk also about cleaning, hygiene, distancing, issues like that. Each of our campuses is cleaned on a daily basis when the building is empty of students and faculty. Since the beginning of the pandemic last year, we have increased our cleaning schedules and their thoroughness at all of our sites. And we've guaranteed that students at each campus have access to hand washing throughout the day, as well as disinfecting gel and a supply of spare face masks should they be needed. For the foreseeable future, students will have their temperatures checked on entering school at the beginning of the school day. This is a policy that may be relaxed if the situation or country mandates are eased. On testing, SYA will be adhering to the airline and country requirements regarding testing upon arrival, or before arrival rather. Once students are in country, SYA will test students and cover the cost shortly after arrival. After that point, after that initial testing, we will follow the guidelines of the country about testing requirements in schools. And if at any time a student displays any symptoms of COVID-19, they will have access to testing. Social distancing and mask wearing continue to be expected behaviors in all of our communities, with the exception, of course, of when students are at home with their host families. However, there are some differences between general social distancing, and physical distancing for students who are in school. So when we use the term physical distancing, we're talking about the spacing of students, the spacing between students when they're in school, in the classroom settings. So you can please be assured that SYA standards for distancing in schools are based on the legal regulations in each of our countries, and these are strictly enforced in all school spaces. If you look at the right of the screen here, you can see the studying abroad social responsibilities use the ABCs. These are our general guidance for all students. Avoid groups and gatherings, be responsible and make smart decisions, cover your face and wash your hands, and distance yourself from others whenever possible. This is not all that much different from other advice that you've seen many times. And finally, on this page, the COVID-19 illness policy. I do want to draw your attention to our website for this topic as well. One of our principal concerns in preparing for the upcoming school year was ensuring that we had an illness plan that was in place in the event that a student, a host family member, or an adult within the SYA community contracted COVID-19. So when you visit SYA's website in the next few days, you'll be able to view a video that details the steps in our illness protocol by clicking, again, that banner at the top of SYA.org and scrolling down to the section that says illness policy. There's an accordion that you can open to view that video. And a few additional topics here that are of concern. One of our principal considerations in preparing for the upcoming school year was ensuring that if in the event that a student, a host family member, or another member of the SYA community were to contract COVID-19, that we would have a plan for contact tracing in place. If a student or anyone does contract COVID, we will be following the local protocols regarding reporting to local health authorities. And according to the current standard, a close contact would be anyone who has been unmasked at a close distance to someone who has tested positive for COVID-19 for longer than 15 minutes. For students, this would include other students that they have eaten lunch with, for example, their host families, and any other students that they have, they may have spent that kind of time with. It's especially important to in contact tracing that students are honest about their activities, who they've been spending their time with, and where that time was spent. Vaccines are something that are very much at the top of many, many people's minds right now. At this time, students, given their age, do not generally have access to vaccines, but that could change by the end of the summer. SYA is going to continue to monitor this situation closely. And adults, both faculty and host families all throughout our community, are eager to get vaccinated and are in the process of doing so as vaccines become more and more available and as they become eligible to receive them. SYA is tracking some vaccine data online, so I encourage you to go online to that COVID page and check that out. What we're tracking is the percentage of the population that has received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, or a COVID-19 vaccine. On our COVID page, we're going to be updating those percentages once a month. So please check back at the beginning of April for more information if you're interested in tracking those increases across Europe. The relationships that our students form with their host families are ruled by respect and mutual understanding. Host families are very eager to host, and they are expected to follow the same rules as the rest of our community. In a few minutes, Mina is going to talk to you a little bit more about host families. And, from both my personal perspective and the history of SYA, I know that host families have been an instrumental part of our tradition at SYA. They take their responsibility very seriously. In this year, which is so unusual, the host families will meet with SYA so that they clearly understand all of the expectations that are being placed upon them, and they will be signing a document demonstrating their understanding and commitment to providing our students with a safe and supportive home environment. Finally, I'm just going to mention travel very quickly. Travel at SYA encompasses many things. We remain very optimistic about school-sponsored travel in 2021-2022. The travel opportunities for students will depend on the rules and regulations set forward by regional and national governments. And they may look different than what they've looked like in previous years. Even with limitations, any limitations that may be put in place, they will be an important part of our students' experiences at SYA. We are committed to coming up with the most engaging and creative alternatives or other opportunities to connect our students with their local community. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to turn it back to Tom, and thank you for listening to my very long list of topics. You're on mute, Tom.
Thanks so much, Sam, and thank you for your attention to the long list of topics. It's really important for us and for our families, so thank you. One thing that you'll hear today and throughout your time with SYA is that we're very much part of the communities where we are. And in fact, when we decided where to have our campuses, we looked at several important factors. One of them is we want a real authentic experience for students. We don't want huge cities because we want them to have a chance to really live the life and not hear too much English. And also we want to make sure there's an infrastructure in place in these cities that will support students medically and in all ways. So we're very much part of it. In fact, and we've also been part of these communities for a long time. I'll use France as an example. We set up our campus in Rennes in 1968. So it's been quite a long time that we have been together. So it's just wonderful to watch our connections. In fact, you know, we know the doctors, they know us. We know the host families. There are a number of host families who are on waiting lists because they really do want to welcome students over time. And we certainly know the merchants and the restaurateurs, and they're looking forward to having us back. So with that, I want to turn to Pat now and then each RD just to welcome you from their site and to also, I've given each one a topic for them to touch upon. So Pat, hello there.
Buonasera a tutti, buongiorno, depending on where you are. Tom, thank you very much. I want to welcome you to this webinar tonight and welcome our students next year. Given the fact that we don't have students this year, the desire to see you and make this class is greater than ever. So on behalf of all the faculty and staff here, we can't wait to meet you. As far as the country of Italy and our region and our local reality, the pandemic has put people through a lot. You might recall that at the beginning of this, and I think some of you do recall, Italy was very much in the news for how hard the country had been hit. Really at the time, and even now, our region has been much below national averages. The governments still, from top to bottom, from the prime minister to local mayors, are imploring people to not let their guard down. I think the same message you're hearing in the United States, because the light is at the end of the tunnel. And there's a palpable sense of optimism now, when in the past, I think, as you've all been experiencing, we weren't sure what that was. It's particularly with regard to the fact that the big holiday of Easter, as it's celebrated here, is coming up, and local leaders are very well aware that the holidays are times that provide opportunities for spread. So we're just, the public messaging is clear that we need not let our guard down. That's in the form of the distancing and the masks, and to take the precautions we're now used to taking so that we can see better days ahead. Those days have very much to do with whether the students are here on campus. And so when I go into school, it just warms my heart that it never fails that somebody will ask me if the students are coming next year. And this morning when I did, it was the local cafe owner, Nadia, we're going to get those students here. And I said, we're going to do our best to get those students here. And she, of course, has an economic interest because people buy cappuccinos and pastries for breakfast. But the local realtor downstairs from us doesn't have any hope of economic gain, but he's just as eager to have students here. He gives me that thumbs up and tells us he's behind us. And I think they represent the whole community that loves having us as a part of this city. Part of this, if I can pivot really quickly, I wanted to talk a little bit about our medical care. And if we were to think that in the absence of COVID, we are followed carefully either by a school doctor, or we use the system that our host families, doctors, follow our students with our host families, moderating that. In any case, we're very much involved in medical care. You know, we've had mishaps and broken bones and hospitalizations. They're not frequent, but the communities are ready for that by virtue of how SYA selected its towns. But now with COVID, you can imagine that our doctors are all very much prioritizing the needs that their patients have, that our school has. They're available to us for questions. They would most definitely be involved because the protocol calls for it if a student were to be suspected of being positive, and then if a student is positive, we simply tap into the doctor, follow the protocols we put in place, and have very good direct medical advice on the spot. I'm telling you that as a form of reassurance, because that's how it's operated since we've begun. And we are even now, without students in contact with these medical professionals, to be able to answer the questions and understand the landscape as it shifts, especially now that it's getting better. Tom, I'll turn it back to you.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Pat. And good to see you.
You too.
Megan, hola.
Hola. Hello, everyone. Bienvenidos y bienvenidas. It's so nice to be here with you all. Just like Pat said, we're so excited to be welcoming you to our country so soon. So I wanted to say felicidades, congratulations to all of you, and to those who are coming to SYA Spain on behalf of the SYA Spain team. We just can't wait to have you with us in the fall or all year or in the spring. I'd also like to just take a quick moment to thank all of the parents. As Tom mentioned earlier, I studied abroad in Spain when I was in college, and so I know firsthand both the incredible experience that it is, how life-changing it is. It's completely set the path of my life and what I've ended up doing with my life. And I also know how difficult it was for my parents when I did leave the US and study abroad, and that's when I was 20 years old. So you all are, you know, your children are younger, and so I just want to thank you for entrusting them to our care and for being here to learn more about what's going to be happening next year. So just as Pat mentioned about Italy, I think everyone knows that here in Spain, this has been a difficult time as well, just like it has been in the whole world. There have been a lot of ups and downs. Fortunately, things really do seem to be improving here, and there's this sense of positivity about moving forward. More and more people are being vaccinated, the weather is improving, people can be outside more often, so there's just a general sense of that light at the end of the tunnel. And so just like in Italy and across Europe and in the US, everyone is talking about spring break, about keeping ourselves safe during these next, weeks as people are tempted to be together more often. And so we're just really sticking to the regulations that are in place here, and really hopeful and excited about moving forward and about having more normalcy here in the fall and later in the summer. So I wanted to talk a little bit with you all about the relationship that our programs have with other study abroad programs in each country. So within each country, in France and Italy and here in Spain, there's a consortium of study abroad programs that is a really great resource for us. It gives us an opportunity to connect with with colleagues in other programs, and also to learn about what is going on in those other programs. So in each of our countries, there's a very small number of students that are currently studying abroad. And recently I was on a webinar that was put on by St. Louis University, Madrid. They have a campus here in Madrid, and they actually had students on the webinar who were there to tell us a little bit about what it's been like for them to study abroad during this time. And it was just really reassuring to hear from them, to hear about what an incredible experience they're having, even though, of course, it's not a normal year for them. And so I have no doubt that we'll be able to provide that same kind of incredible experience for our students when they get here in the fall. And I wanted to mention one more quick thing, which is Sam touched upon this a little bit more about our school spaces. All of our school spaces are in the center of our cities, gives our students great access to Viterbo, Rennes, and to Zaragoza, and we'll be, following all of the protocols. We've installed air purification systems, or are installing them in those spaces. So we're really excited to be able to use our school spaces and also our cities as classrooms for you all when you get here. So thank you very much. Back to you, Tom.
Gracias.
De nada.
And bonjour, Ina.
Bonsoir, Tom. Bonjour de Rennes, everyone. Thank you all for being with us today. I also want to convey my félicitations to students on the acceptance. The SYA France staff and faculty are very much looking forward welcoming students. And as Tom mentioned, they're already preparing for September. So on our country situation, I will echo what Megan and Pat just said in regards to the general feeling of hope there is right now in France and in Europe with the mass vaccination plan and the efforts deployed to really speed up the process to vaccinate people. We are also finally seeing light at the end of the tunnel. So overall, and to give you a really big picture of what's happening here, people in France have not stopped living. They go to work, they go to school, people take the bus and the metro. They travel throughout the country, but at the same time, people are very respectful over the government measures and are doing their best, whether it is wearing a mask once outside one's residence or abiding by curfew laws. Because we're all very anxious, as you guys are, to continue working towards the right direction and this as fast as possible. So everyone is really doing their part. And in regards to life here, I just wanted to quickly mention a story and say that we have right now 5 alumni from the class of 2019 studying at the American University of Paris this semester. They all took a semester off from their respective colleges in the US to be in person at AUP. They actually arrived in Paris early January, and one of them, Elisabeth, who took a semester off from Georgetown, and she hopped on a TGV to Rennes 2 weeks ago and came to visit us and her host family. So that was great. It's always a pleasure to see former students back at school, back in Rennes, but even more so this year. So I'm just transitioning now to speaking about host families, as the host day is really a key part of our program. And I will talk a bit about the host family process, our wonderful host family coordinators, and the overall excitement of our host families at the prospect of hosting our students next year. So all 3 sites have a dedicated host family coordinator who has been with us for at least 10 years each. We all have some very tenured and experienced families, but we also recruit new families each year who go through a very strict interview process and a very thorough background check. Additionally to our regular process, and Sam mentioned that earlier in her presentation, this year our host families will sign a I understand document which outlays our expectations in regards to our safety protocols in the context of the COVID. As usual, close collaboration, communication, and orientation of our families is very important. It's constant, and actually this year our host family coordinators have already been in contact with host families about next year. So all three of us RDs feel very fortunate that we have a wide range of families who all have in common a true desire to host our students, but also to partner with us in providing the best experience possible for the student, which safety is always a priority. As usual, the resident director and the host family coordinator start the placement process in the spring, making sure that most of our students' needs are met. In early summer, during the visa process, students and host families get each other's contact information. We ask that at least one contact is made during the summer, but many students start their host family relationship before arrival by communicating in a very regular fashion throughout the summer with the host family. We will have more information on host families because we know you have a lot of questions in that regard during our next webinar in 2 weeks, which is called Meet Your SYA Community. We're very excited about that event and we hope you attend. Actually, our host family coordinators will be on that call along with former students. Elizabeth, who I just mentioned, will be there as well. And we'll talk about her homestay experience. Merci, Tom.
Merci, merci. And we're almost finishing up our formal presentation, and then I'll get to the Q&A portion of it. I do want to say, Megan mentioned that we are connected to a lot of other overseas programs and what they're doing, and there are some college programs that have been running this year. And I just want to offer a few lessons learned because we've asked them those questions. One of them is the importance of adhering from the moment, what the airlines say you need to do to what the community expectations are of our respective communities. So that would just be an obvious but an important lesson, which is all of this will run much smoother if we adhere to those things. The other thing that we've learned is that this age group, there have been very, very few illnesses of COVID, and all of them have been kind of light versions of it. But it is important, as we've been talking about in this webinar, to plan ahead. And Sam, I know, has a whole detailed presentation that will be on the web about if a student does get sick, here's what we would do. And so we've kind of worked our way through all of that. So the last topic I'd love for Sam to touch upon is that whole community standards topic, because it's important. Each year we bring our communities together, and we're bringing kids from many different schools, different parts of the country. And we bring them and we have a conversation together about the importance of how we want to live together as a group and how we want to respect the country that we're in. Next year, obviously, there'll be more depth to that conversation because of COVID. And Sam, I'd love for you to talk just a minute about that.
Yeah, I'd love to. So at SYA, like Tom was saying, we do have community standards that are very important every year, but they're going to be more important than ever this year. We expect our students to follow the public social expectations that any other young person would be subject to within their community, which includes health and safety rules. It's very important for our students to remember that they need to be behaving in ways that safeguard the safety of others. And sometimes that means that it's ahead of their own needs or wants. Since our students are selected who are already mature and responsible and capable, we're confident that you're going to take these responsibilities seriously next year. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Sam. So let's shift gears and move to the questions and answer. And I'm going to bundle some of these because they're in topics. One of them is about the travel and what can happen. And Pat, I would love for you to talk a little bit again about what we may or may not be able to do next year and how we are going to approach that.
Sure. So even, I guess the standard would be what we would do if there wasn't COVID. Even when there is no COVID, our travel rolls out later in the year as students gain their knowledge and understanding about their immediate surroundings and gather and increase their language proficiency. So that buys us some time to do the regular activities that we do with our Wednesday fieldwork. And however, that will be modified a little bit, even though our Wednesday fieldwork tries to limit our movement in groups and do things in smaller groups to develop independence. In all those activities that we put a safety net underneath them in sort of complicated ways. But the point is that the tourism industry in all three of our countries is desperately eager to get back up and going. The governments know that. They know that it's a great source of income for the economy, and we're a part of that. So although we can't guarantee right now what we will be able to do, we know that we will be able to experience very rich possibilities right outside our doors and even a little bit further in our regions, because our schools are situated in places where the archaeological sites, the history, the art, the culture abounds without having to go very far, which is part of our program anyway. So we're very hopeful that we will have big, beautiful opportunities, but at this moment, we can't say exactly what they are.
Thanks, Pat. Sam, I'm going to turn to you. There are several questions about vaccinations, and I know it's a topic that we're all interested in. me trying to set one up for myself. And so if you can just go over that one more time, so we can make sure where we are right now, and as we continue to monitor that.
Yes, of course, I'd be happy to. So as it currently stands, I'm sure most of you know that because of the age group that our students fall into, they're not eligible to be vaccinated at this time in the US. But you know, this is a situation that we are very closely monitoring. There is some expectation that things may change, but we don't know how things are going to change. So as the situation does change in the US and as it changes overseas, it's something that we're going to be monitoring. And as it evolves, we will share as much information as we can when we're able to.
Thanks, Sam. Here's a question that I hadn't anticipated. It's an interesting one, which is language teaching and people wearing masks. And I'm just wondering whether the RDs might just talk about how that intersection is going to happen next year.
I can jump in on that question. Well, I think our students' listening skills are going to develop even more quickly, because there's going to just be, it's a difference than, you know, compared to when you can see someone speaking. But one of the things that we're doing right now for our professional development work is working with ACTFL, which is an organization that focuses on language teaching and learning. And everything that we're going to be doing will, you know, reflect what we're learning with that organization and also what we know. And so things like slowing down speech, repeating things for students, having students, you know, making sure that students understand that it's completely fine and normal, and we want them to tell us when they can't understand. That would be true masked or unmasked. So I think it's just something that we're going to adapt to, and that our students will adapt to as well. The positive is that when students are with their host families, which is where a huge part of the language learning takes place, they won't be masked, and their host families will not be masked either. And so that's going to be a space where they don't have that concern. And of course, we are also hopeful that at some point during next year, the mask mandates will, you know, won't be there because of the percentage of the population that has been vaccinated. But of course, we just can't guarantee that, and we can't really guess what's going to happen. But I just think we will adapt, and we will be very understanding as students adapt to that part of the language learning process. Mina,
I wonder if you can help me out. There are a number of questions here about questions around dates and extracurriculars and host families. And you mentioned earlier that they're going to be the week of the 22nd individual country thing. So can you just describe what will covered in those so that students from that particular country can hear very specific things? So.
Yes, of course. So the week of the 23rd of March, we'll have 3 different events. Those will be country specific. So one of them will be France specific, one will be for Italy, and one for Spain. On each one of those, we'll have our host family coordinators along with 2 former students talking about the host family experience. Within that webinar, we'll also have a few teachers, faculty members describing classes they're teaching, as well as doing something that's sort of a game. So I don't want to reveal too much right now, Tom, because the teachers have been talking about it and working on it actually this morning, so that nobody gets prepared for it. There's no grade attached to it. So there'll be a game room, we'll call it that way. And then there'll be a room where the extracurricular coordinator will be present, because we know we always get a lot of questions about sports, music, activities that students can do here in our cities. So it'll be the same type of event, but it'll be very much country specific. It's mainly targeted to our student audience, but parents are invited as well. RDs will be present. We'll start the call, and we'll be rotating in the rooms.
Great. And I should say to people too that in addition to those kind of webinars that we're going to be posting, if we haven't already, on this call, and you'll have a link, you can make an appointment to have an individual conversation with your RD. And so I encourage you to do that. And there's a few questions that are very specific about countries I see here. So make an appointment to talk to your RD and get to know him or her and ask your questions. And please do that. There are some other questions posted here, which are what I'd call kind of admissions related questions or visa questions. And that will be the country manager. And let me just remind people who they are. If you're going to Spain, Pam Eaton is the country manager. And so if you have specific questions about visa or enrollment kinds of things for that, what do the numbers look like? And for Spain, that Pam Eaton would be your person. And Bryce Koval is the person for Italy and France. And so please reach out to him. As I say, we're going to be sending you more and more information. And I think right now, Shauna has just posted the information. So please feel free to make an individual appointment. I know the RDs look forward to getting to know you better. I would say this too, that the numbers in general are going to be where we've been over the past years. We're able to do that, accommodate them, and socially distance. The new thing for next year is that we have limited number of semester students. For years, people have been clamoring for that because some people can't get over for a whole year. And so we're looking forward to that. And it's roughly going to be roughly equal numbers of fall and spring students at each of them. Then we'll have the majority of students will be year long. So we look forward to that. Let me just see if there are other questions that we can ask. Maybe the one thing that there are a few questions on just a regular school day. I mean, maybe we can just take a moment for that. What in general, what's a typical day like for a student? Would be a nice way to kind of finish up our questions here. And maybe
I could take that, Tom.
Okay.
Really, there are 2 kinds of school days. One that is more focused on the school building where students go to classes, and then each one of our schools has a field work day where we are predominantly not in school. Students are not in school. They are out doing challenge activities in the community, sometimes a little further away. Again, either in small groups or even in pairs at times. But then the regular school day goes from some, we vary, but at the 8 o'clock hour till about the 4 o'clock hour with some variabilities on a non-field work day with most of our elective classes have a single block and a double block, in addition to some work that they would be doing on field work, whereas our math and English courses meet 4 days a week, not on the field work day, and the sort of continuity of and the sequencing in those classes, English a little less. But so there's a block schedule 4 days a week and a field work day 1 day a week, Monday through Friday.
Anything to add, Mina or Megan?
I just wanted to jump in. In Spain, we might be doing some modification to the field work to have it spread out throughout the week instead of on one specific day, because we're working on our schedule right now. So the important thing is that there will be field work. Students will be doing things outside of the building. It just might make more sense because of the number of students that we'll have to have it woven in throughout the week instead of on one specific day. I saw a question about just this last one about travel permitted with host families. Tom, I thought I could just answer that really quickly.
Perfect. You read my mind. That was the one I was going to ask next. So thanks.
So when travel is, completely open in our countries, yes, we really encourage, if our host families are taking any kind of a trip, we always encourage our students to go with the host family. I mean, there's nothing better for the students than to be with their family, immersed in the language and in the country, wherever it is they might go. So, there might be a weekend where a student has to leave a little bit early from school, for example, and that's completely fine. That's something we encourage, so that they're then spending that whole weekend with their family. It's just really the best thing that you can do. And I think that relates to, a question I saw earlier about, how has COVID changed things related to immersion in the country? And from the webinar I was on recently with the students from SLU Madrid, they were actually saying that they felt like they were more immersed even than some of their friends who had studied abroad in the past, because they were going home a little bit earlier because of curfews that were in place, spending more time with their host families, and just using the language with the host family. I mean, we encourage you all and expect you all to speak the language, the target language, together in school and outside of school, but it's impossible, obviously, for us to control that at all times. And it's also impossible for you all to only ever speak in that language when you're out together alone. But when you're with your host family, you don't have an option. And so it is really, really great for your language skills and for your immersion and for the bond that you create with your host family to really invest in time with them. And that's something that we expect and we hope for any year, but I think it's something that's happening even more naturally during this time for a lot of students.
Terrific, terrific. Well, I think we're coming to the end of our time, and I definitely want to encourage people. We weren't able to get to every single question. So if it's a question very specific to the country and you want to meet your RD, there's as Mina's mentioned, the week of the 23rd, you'll have that possibility. But even before then, we've just posted a way for you to have an individual appointment with the RD. We will have other safety seminars as we go through the summer. And certainly we'll have orientation kind of on in these kind of formats and again, you get to know your fellow SYAers in that together. And if you have questions about visa and enrollment issues, please get in touch with your country manager. I just want to again reiterate how excited we are. It's been quite a year for us all around the globe, and for us to get you out around the globe next year is just a delight for us. And you can tell our RDs and our faculty, you don't see our faculty right now, but they just can't wait. And I would say this, that having worked in other schools, our faculty is an amazingly dedicated, long-term group. There are people there who've been there for decades, and they love what they do, and they bring that. And also we do have faculty, our English and math teachers who come mostly from the United States, and we have people who are ready. Some of them are remaining from this year, are going to be there for next year, and we have others going over. So we've got full staff and ready to go. And so as I finish off, I just want to open it up and see if any of my colleagues here want to say anything else as we finish up, and I want to thank you again. So anything that my friends here want to say.
Arrivederci.
Merci beaucoup, and I just got my first booking, so.
Forward to being in touch with all of you on the phone or by email, and welcoming you to Spain soon.
Great. Thank you, one and all. Great to see you. Good night now. Bye.
Thank you.